Hello and welcome to Therate. I'm Ashley with my co-host Katie, and this is a really special episode where we decided to honor somebody who commented on our podcast about Exile with a full podcast response because it was such a well thought out question and response. And so this response is to Mike DeBruyne. So I'm just going to read his comment, and then Katie and I both have prepared some thoughts for you, Mike. So, don't know how I got in this corner of the internet. Welcome, Mike. But this being one of my favorite songs of her might explain it. His writing credits in my mind always come from these being his words when they were having a fight. And I think he's maybe responding to me saying something about William Bowery or Bon Iver, one of the two. Um, He continues to say, what I missed in the discussion, either you didn't talk about it or I did not hear or remember it, is the meaning or significance of the quote, I have seen this film before and I didn't like the ending. Does this mean previous relations or was this a recurring theme in this relation? Just as if this is a post relation perspective from both sides, this could also be them looking back on why they broke up the last time while having relationship counseling. I strongly identify or sing with the male here, but that might be because this is one of the few songs in her discography where the male gets a word in and we men have to stick up for each other with a smiley face. So, Mike, Katie and I both have responses, but I did just want to say, like, you're right. We don't get the male's perspective very often in these songs, and I love that she includes a male's perspective here too. And often we're trying to make thoughts as far as these songs, as unbiased as possible, right? Most of the time. But to have a male's perspective in here does bring up, an idea of men's mental health, of the male's perspective, and there's always something to be said for like the other side of a conversation, right? These are oftentimes in these songs we get one person's perspective. So I do think it's interesting that we get two people's perspective here too. So Katie's going to start off with her thoughts, and then I have a couple thoughts too, and we'll see where this goes. Katie, what did you think of Mike's comment?
First of all, Mike, thank you so much for commenting. That was super fun. And like you have such like a good insight and in-depth comment. And so I was just really excited to see your engagement with the song Exile because like you, it is one of my top five favorite songs by Taylor ever. And I really like agree with all the points that you made. When you asked the question, like, is that lyric, I've seen this film before and didn't like the ending. Is this referring to this current relationship or a pattern of past relationships? I was like, oh my gosh, like that's a really great insight. And I really could see it going both ways. I think it's completely up to interpretation. And I think maybe both could be true. Like potentially, this is a pattern that you've experienced in a past relationship and it's reemerging in the current one that is now falling apart, which is like, okay, like it's a pattern then, right? Um, and I agree that she really doesn't, or she does give the male perspective, and I think that even like some of like how what Bon Iver is singing in the song, like I never learned to read your mind. I couldn't turn things around. Like I feel like that's even something that like online, sometimes I'll hear men say like we can't read women's minds. Like that's something I've heard before, and maybe you have too. Ashley, I'm curious your thoughts. But I was like when you brought that up, I was like, oh, I could almost see how maybe she's like kind of saying something that like collectively she's heard men on the internet say, or maybe men in her life say, which is like, I'm not a mind reader, like,
Hmm.
which is fair. Like, you're not a
Yeah.
mind reader and you shouldn't have to be.
Yeah, and I think that's true in all relationships, right? That like sometimes we come into them with a expectation that you just know what I need,
Mhm.
and that's not a reasonable expectation. Within, I mean, obviously there are some things that are clear that somebody would need, but in
Yes,
general,
yes.
yeah.
Right. I think like that's where there's a nuance necessary because, and this is actually something that I discuss in relationship counseling with clients, is that there are things that should quote unquote the apparent, right? An apparent need. And then there's mind reading expectations, and they're very different things. So for example, I try to like nuance it with the example of like somebody shouldn't have to explicitly tell you that they need you to treat them with respect and civility. That's baseline, right?
Hmm.
And somebody expecting that is reasonable and appropriate. However, if you have a specific need, or if there's specific words or phrases that your partner uses that trigger you or really upset you, like you can say like, "Hey, that's not working for me. Can we find different language? Can you express your needs or your opinions in a way that helps me?" Like, as an example of like, they can't mind read that. You're gonna have to fill in the blanks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What else did you have for Mike?
Honestly, that was it. I just
Yeah.
the perspective that you brought, and I agree with it. And I feel like there's just a lot of nuance here. So,
Yeah.
if you have more thoughts about this song or any of our other songs, hit us up. We love your insights, and we want to keep interacting with you.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. I love that. Like it seems like we've had a couple of people really like give some thoughtful responses and I really enjoy it when people do that. Um so in my perspective, I think this song is referencing this relationship specifically. That was a question of like, is this relationship or other relationships from these people? And I think it is between these two people who are singing. Um, I was listening to the song Exile again, and the lyric, "You were my town, now I'm in exile, seeing you out," really stuck out to me when I was like re-reviewing it. Um, it's interesting because the person in exile is seeing the other person out,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, and then we also have the lyric, "second, third, and hundredth chances, balancing on breaking branches." And that to me sounds like it's not just a chance in on relationships in general. It seems like that's in this relationship, I've given you so many chances.
Yes.
Um, and then they both sing that line, "Now I'm in exile, seeing you out." So are they both exiling each other? Or you know what I mean? Like it's just such an interesting way to put that. And is it at the same time? Like are they both on the exile path, like together, parallel lines of like, you go first. No, you go first. Like I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it that much before. So what
But
are your thoughts on that piece, Katie?
I understood that to kind of be that moment in a conflict where person A is saying, like, you do X, Y, and Z, and that hurts my feelings. And then person B says, you do X, Y, Z, and that hurts my feelings. And you're literally saying the exact same thing. And I cannot tell you how often I encounter this dynamic in couples therapy, where like somebody will say, like, I'm feeling hurt in this way. And then the other person replies with, like, that's exactly how I feel, like what you're doing to me.
Yeah.
And then that's like my favorite moment as a therapist to be like, we found common ground. And
Yeah.
like make a joke of it kind of lightly just to be like, hey, we're looking for common ground. I think we found some.
Yeah. I mean, you're both in the same feeling, right?
Yeah. And I
Absolutely.
think like that's my interpretation of that lyric of like, I'm in exile. No, I'm in exile. And like the reality is you're both in exile because you've both maybe exiled yourselves and been exiled. Like it's a bit of both. Like it was done to you and you participated in that dynamic as well.
Hmm.
At least from the other person's perspective. Um,
Yeah.
One thing that I will add, and I forget which content creator highlighted this, but I was like, oh, that is such a good insight that it goes from you were my town and then it shifts to you were my crown.
Yeah. My town, I think, is from the male perspective, and my crown, I think, is from the female perspective, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just like the implications of like you were my home and
Hmm.
then like you were like my pride, right? Because
Hmm.
like I think of like town being where like that's your home, that's your community, that's your safe place potentially, and then like crown as being like this is like what I'm proud of, this is what I'm known for, this is this is like the crown just like adds like majesty, it enhances what's already there,
Hmm.
right? It's a symbol of like your power, your authority, And I just like, woof, like what that means for a relationship. So good.
Yeah. 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 And I also just noted, yeah, gosh, I'm really glad that we have the opportunity to come back to this song because there are so many layers that we didn't get a chance to talk about. And I'm
Yeah.
sure even after we do this, we're gonna think like, oh yeah, there's this whole other piece of this that we didn't talk about. But it starts out with him singing, and then it goes to her, but then they sing it together.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's just so interesting.
Right. Like we're both, like I couldn't turn things around. You never turn things around is like the echo, right? Like I'm taking ownership and the person's like, yeah, and you didn't.
I did not catch that. That's so interesting.
It's like in parenthesis, like, at the end when like, she's singing and then like it's like the harmony, the echo
Hmm.
part. And I think maybe like he and she both sing the echoes at different points of the song.
Yeah. 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 That makes sense. Um, there's so many layers. The last that I had when I was kind of just listening to the song again is he emphasizes you were my town, and she says, I'm leaving out the side door.
Hmm.
And the idea of like the home, I'm just gonna like sneak out, right? Like I'm done. And I
Yeah.
think going back to the original question of, I think I've seen this film before, but I didn't like the ending. Like to me, that sounds like somebody who's just worn out. Like after the 100th chances, then it's like, how many chances am I going to give you?
Yeah.
And that's a completely fair question.
Well, going back to what you said earlier, highlighting that lyric, balancing on breaking branches, that to me feels like a poetic way of saying I've been walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
And how often, as therapists, do we hear somebody using that same phrase to describe a relationship that they're in, where they're just like, I'm exhausted having to watch myself all the time because I don't know when something's going to break.
Hmm.
Like that tension is really quite unbearable when you're trying to balance on a branch that you know is going to break. Just
Right.
let.
Right. And that makes me think too of our conversation on mirror ball with the tightrope, right? Like that tension of like balancing on something so thin. Um, so yeah, so
Yeah.
interesting. So, Mike, I noticed that you also said, we men have to stick together. And I just want to also normalize male Swifties that, like, if you relate to other parts of the song that just Taylor sings, that's totally, completely acceptable too. And really glad that you enjoyed that song and that you listened to our podcast. So thanks for doing that. Any final thoughts, Katie?
Thanks, Mike. You're awesome. Keep coming.
Yes.
Love to keep responding.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, Revisit to Exile. And I don't think we said this at the beginning, but we are not therapy, but we are a fun time. And we will see you guys soon.